Good afternoon, everyone. We will start off today's meeting with a prayer. Let us pray. Lord, we come together with a shared purpose and ask for your presence to unite us. May peace reign in our hearts as we discuss matters before us. Help us listen with empathy, speak with kindness, and work collaboratively towards our common goals. May your peace be the foundation of all our interactions. Let unity and peace be guiding principles today and always. Amen. Please be seated. Welcome to everyone today, council staff, members of the public. Good to see everyone. We will jump straight into it. Do we have any apologies? Looks like everyone's here. There is no public forum today. Any declarations or conflicts of interest in today's agenda? Appear to be none, and just the confirmation of the agenda. Just have a couple of changes, if it's all right with councillors. So item 8.2, which is the impacts for reduced funding on the 2024-25 roading program report. That's just a report for information, not decision. There's no decisions in there. So we will move that to 7.4 to avoid confusion. And also the in-committee parts is just minutes, so we'll table that until the next meeting rather than going into committee. We'll just do that next time we have an in-committee item. Do we have any concerns with that order of business? So if that's all right with councillors, we will move on to the first item, which is the confirmation of minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday, the 17th September 2024. Did we have any questions or comments? Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. If I may take a moment of confirmation of minutes on paragraph 5 in regard to the parking infringement. I inadvertently had missed a word in the conversation at our last meeting in regards to the parking meters, where it refers in the meeting itself to remove the parks. Inadvertently, should have been to remove the parking meters. Now, if you note that in the minutes, it is written as such. So probably just need a bit of a clarification to the general public and to councillors that, yes, I was referring to the meters and not to the parks, because there would be quite a bit of confusion, and because some people can't park between the white lines now. So I would just like that the minutes now that is as written be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. So in the meeting you said the parking fees were to remove the parks, but you like it recorded as the meters, which is how it is, just for clarification. Thank you for that, Councillor. Any further comments on these minutes? Could I please have a move that these are true and correct record? Councillor Dixon, seconded by Councillor Richard McPhail. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against, the motion is carried. On to reports for information. 7.1 Active Southland End of Year Report 2023-24. Mr. Steve Gear, General Manager of Active Young People from Active Southland, will come and present the report. Welcome, Steve. Yep.
There we go. Firstly, thank you, Your Worship, and elected members for this opportunity to present on our report to you guys. And I think it's quite symbolic. It's quite a history, I guess, we've got together working in partnership for this long, and I think a lot of that is down to the relationship we have with the council, and especially the operational staff who are so supportive and working in partnership with us as well. So I'd just really like to acknowledge that partnership has gone back way before my time starting here. So I think as we move through this relationship, we really build from strength to strength in what we're able to do in partnership with council to service the community. And I'd just like to refer to some of the items in the report around the 3 outcomes in particular. Around outcome 3, having a choice of quality places to go and things to do. Things such as the Moonshine Trail, a lot of the work we've started to do in the play space, which also acknowledges intergenerational play, so not just for young people, but for our ageing population as well. Working through our healthy active learning contracts into things such as neighbourhood play systems, which you probably would have seen Wendy Kiddo presented on at the Green PAV conference, and sort of building ideas on those communities around utilising the spaces there that we have to the most effect. And working also in partnership around Parks Week, so celebrating the amazing areas we have in Easton, such as Dollamore Park, and also the redevelopment down at Tulloch Park, and how we engage with community there to actually understand what they need, so we can actually then work in partnership with council to actually say, well, how do we provide these things? So a big piece of the mahi we do in line with council is really working with the community up here to understand, because every community is its own unique community. In regards to outcome 5, we live in a compassionate and caring community. I think one thing we recognise in our communities now is how many people have lived experience of disability, and it is an area where we've put a lot of time and effort into, in terms of how do we start to work with not only young people, but the breadth of the community, and giving opportunities for people with disabilities to be active through experiences, but also through their outdoor spaces. And also working through our present contracts and how we leverage off those across our organisations such as GRX, Active Families and Tuku Oranga, around providing as many opportunities as we can for the Gore community to not only have access to experiences to be active, but also for their health and well-being as well. And of course, around valuing and respecting the environment, around GDC outcome 6 is the spaces and places strategy. So how are we actually looking at the spaces and places we have and utilising those to the best of the ability, looking forward into the future as well around how those spaces and places best meet the needs of community, and how we do that in a practical way as well. I think one thing we're really proud of with our relationship with council and the operations team is just how good of partnerships we've had over these years and how they've developed. And I think that is something, obviously we sense to continue and develop as well, and acknowledging that we are moving into times where the needs of the community will change, and they'll be diverse and different as we move forward and young people get older and things like that. So being really on the, a finger on the pulse of what we need to do to keep innovating and keep delivering to our community in the terms of active rec play and sport. So I think that's about a summarisation of the report. And is there any questions?
I've got 2 questions, one to yourself and also one to the writer of the report that went with it. And the question relates to what I think was called the 2017 Active Recreation Strategy, that was looking at cycling and walking through the district, and wondering where that sits in terms of guiding the activities that you do, and looking forward in terms of the facilities that council provides.
Yeah, I think that if we look at that in terms of our submission into the LTP, we've talked to making active transport sort of a pillar of what we look at moving forwards. So taking the learnings that we know from that strategy of 2017 and actually turning it into something, more current, fit for purpose and current for the current time. So with that, we have an active transport person that is employed at Active Southland to help actually implement that as well.
and I see the work that you're doing as an important part, really, of what I see as the wider activities that council should be doing, and thank you for that. It's good. In terms of the report that came with it, that was prepared by Parks and Recreation Manager, at the end of it, it talks about significance and says the views and preferences of the community and neighbours are well understood, with a strong desire to see valuable work of Active Southland continue into our area. My question is, what is the source of that comment? Was it part of any surveys that have been done, for example?
It's very much my feeling, just working with people in the community, really. And yeah, I've had I guess a very close relationship with the e-school community through the neighbourhood play system project, and yeah, I guess that's very much a prevailing view in that community. So, yeah.
Councillor, any other questions? Councillor Forman-Farr?
Thank you, through the chair. Steve, when you were talking at the start there, you're talking about perhaps initiatives for older people down the track, because obviously our community is ageing, as we all know, and largely this is for younger people, as I've read it, and the schools have pretty substantial systems in for sports activities and things like that, but there seems to be a gap in the market there, perhaps at the other end. Is that something that you're looking for in the future?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I did note down here 33% of the population to be 65 plus by 2038. So that is a significant proportion of the population that we'll be looking to service. So I think when we look at that, especially looking at especially into that intergenerational play aspect. So I think sometimes we can look at it, play as something for children, but it is often something also that brings people together throughout the lifespan. So it's looking in how we actually bring multiple generations together for not just physical well-being, but mental, and also connecting them as well. And I think through the active transport that we're looking at as well, part of that strategy is also talking to how we engage with the elderly population as well. And of course, through the existing work we do through Tuka Oranga and the health coaches. So I think you're 100% correct that there is a real gap there, and it's something that we also identify and acknowledge as well in our work moving forwards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. So just wondering, Toko Orangi, I was just wondering how you support people that, like, with health, diabetes and cholesterol, weight. Can you explain that a wee bit? How?
Sure. So it's not my area of expertise, but Toko Oranga essentially is a health coach. And I think as each community is its own self, each person is its own self. So it's very much a holistic, person-centric approach to actually what do they have access to, what are their strengths, what are their challenges. So it's really working with each person to really understand what in particular needs they have, because there's no real cookie cutter approach to any person's health or well-being. So, and I think that's the really cool part of it, is that it acknowledges each person as an individual and then works with that person to actually cater to what we can put in place to support their well-being moving forwards. And it seems to be something that is very, very successful. And I think that individual approach is needed for people today as well, so they can actually engage with these services and know they'll be listened to and they'll be catered to for their own specific needs.
I would agree with you, and I think well done. Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you off the hook, Steve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Mayor, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
Just like to say how impressive it is, the work that Active Southland does, having attended 2 of their events in the rain this year, and they were very, very well attended, both the Moonshine Trail and the disabilities event that they did as well. Very good turnout, so it just shows how good those events are. Do I have a mover that this report be received? I believe there was one other recommendation in here as well, and acknowledge the positive health and wellbeing impact of active Southland programs and what they have on the community. Councillor Hovell, seconded by Councillor Fraser. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against, the motion is carried. Item 7.2 is the Mayor report. I will take it as read. Any questions or comments? Councillor Paul McPhail.
No real question, but just observation. Just a bit concerned the reimagining of the Matara. Somehow we missed the invitation for that, and there's quite a few of us that wanted to go to that. So I'm just a wee bit concerned somehow something got lost in the system. If that perhaps can be looked at.
That can be. I can pass it on to the organising team. I didn't send out the invite. I do recall yourself and Councillor McPhail both on the list there for the sign-in list. So I'm not sure what happened, but we can chase it up, Councillor. Any further questions, Councillor Fraser?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think I said it last time. I mean, you've had a meeting with a minister. Could you just outline what you talk about with him? Because he's the minister of 3 portfolios.
Yes, I will make a note of that, Councillor. For that one in particular, he was holding a breakfast through the Southland Chamber of Commerce. So he was talking about all of his portfolios from statistics to commerce and all the different work that he's doing there. So it wasn't I mean, we had an individual conversation just about the financing of 3 Waters and whatnot, but it was a whole range of different aspects. But I will include what we talk about. Absolutely. Any further comments? Could I please have a move that report is received? Councillor Stringer, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 7.3, the Matoda Community Board minutes. Do we have any questions? I have a mover that these are received. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I just make a comment first?
Sure can.
If there's no questions from other councillors. Just point 2, the Matara Library and Service Centre being back to normal. We held a barbecue, a bit of an unofficial opening the other day, and it was well received. And it was good to see some young, happy faces in the library once again, and the staff rejuvenated, looking forward to the future. So once again, I thank the staff and Chief Executive for making this happen, and may it long at last.
Thank you, Councillor. Good success story there. Could I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Dixon. Any further comments? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against, the motion is carried. 7.4, but it will be 8.2 in your info packs. Murray, did you want to come up and speak to this report at all?
Through your worship, a lot of the information contained in this report is probably information that we have covered in a recent workshop leading up to the LTP. So I'm assuming everyone has read the report and open to any questions that councillors may have.
Questions, councillors? Just questions at this stage while we've got Murray, and then we'll move to comments afterwards. Councillor Fraser.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Murray, just for the people that are listening, we talk about shortfalls and what have we any way of measuring what, in say, percentage of road sealing that would be each year that we're missing out on because of this lower funding?
Through your worship, so the pothole prevention fund covers a lot of the areas that you're talking about, including resealing, and that particular activity class we we've received 100% of what we requested. We will be carrying out the program as we intended. It's more things like weed spraying and dealing with spills and emergency situations. Those are the areas that we've received less in. Other particularly significant shortfalls in the funding that we've received are in the areas of footpath renewals and maintenance, and also bridges. And the most significant area is in the local road, low cost, low risk improvements. And we had quite a program of works mainly aimed at the rural roads, which we've received no funding whatsoever for. That was for things like sealing the gravel road intersections with sealed roads, seal widening on some very narrow sealed roads such as Knapdale Road and Atama Road. So as I said earlier, we didn't receive any funding from NZTA towards those projects. So basically it has deferred those projects until we do receive some subsidised funding for them.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gardine and then Councillor Reid.
I had a question at the workshop about the cost of redoing the drainage on the gravel roads, how much it costs per kilometre. I just wonder if you'd figured that out.
Through your worship, the cost of doing that work is approximately $10 a lineal metre, but it does vary significantly depending on the terrain that we're working in and the distance that any spoil may have to be carted. Those sort of factors can have a really significant impact on the cost of those projects.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Murray, for the report. I'm just wondering what consequences GDC will be looking at if our bridging safety issues are, the maintenance isn't there as much as we'd like it to be. Is that putting us at significant risk?
Through your worship, it definitely increases the risk because the bridges that we had programmed for replacement and structural component replacement, so that's things like new decks and significant components, the reason for them being on that program and being prioritised as they were or as they are is that those bridges, almost all of them, in fact, probably it is all of them, are wooden bridges that were constructed around about the same time, and they are coming to the end of their economic life. So their ability to carry the loads that we would like them to carry is reducing. So that's probably the biggest impact. But the risk of a bridge failing is also increased. You know, there are several risks, but the biggest impact that's likely straight away or very soon is a reduction in the capacity of the bridge to carry loads.
Thank you. Can I just ask another question, please? So if that's the case, do we have any ability to restrict speeds on those bridges?
Through your worship, yes we do, and a number of our bridges around the network have signs at both approaches that either restrict the speeds for heavy traffic to go over them, or the loading that they can take, or a combination of both. And those factors are determined by our bridging engineers, who are experts in that field. They inspect those bridges that are on that list, or look as though they may be needing to go on that list on an annual basis. So those postings can change year by year.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hovell.
To go through that process, does it have, is it reported back to council, or do you have the delegation to do those things without going through a public process?
Through your worship, what we normally do is I don't think we have been reporting that directly to council. However, what we do is we put a public notice, an annual public notice in the newspapers advising of the current status of the various bridges that do have restrictions on them, and that is of great use to our commercial heavy traffic operators who need to know those sorts of things when they're planning a journey with a heavy load.
So I guess my request then is if the Chief Executive can please check that we have the delegations properly in place for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenzie.
Murray, do we have any bridges that are on the verge of being shut altogether? In other words, if you've got a back road somewhere, something like that, with a bridge that's getting sad, do we have any that are in risk of just being completely shut?
Through your worship, yes, we do. We have one bridge that we are having discussions. It serves one property at the moment that has come to the end of its life, and it's a bridge that we have we've closed. We've put closed notices up on the bridge. We've also just recently requested expert legal opinion on the council's responsibility to continue access across a stream in that sort of situation, and also about our liabilities when a bridge gets to that state. One of the problems that we do have is that when bridges get to that state and there is very little, if any, actual public benefit as opposed to private benefit, then it's very unlikely that NZTA and the central government will contribute to the replacement of that bridge or the upgrading of that bridge. So it does put us in a bit of a tricky position.
Thank you, Murray. That was going to be part two of my question, is actually liability. If we say it's closed and people keep using it, where do we sit? But you've already answered that question, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. Murray, do you think the decision makers, say New Zealand Transport Authority, understands the economic risks to places like Southland of not funding the replacement of bridges and just basically the lack of funding?
I probably can't really comment on that. All I can hope for is that their advisors, that their advice they're receiving does emphasise that, and I think the news media have published a number of stories about councils around the country sheeting that message home to the government.
Thank you.
Councillor Richard McPhail.
There we go. Just one question after that delay of getting that going. Contractor costs, and I know we did budgets prior around what it was costing. What is that, between 21 and 24, what is the increase across the board to the contractors' costs that were actually going out there and the budget that the funding allocation that's been given there. I've got a figure in my head, I just want to confirm it.
Yes, through your worship. The cost fluctuation during that period was between 20 and 30%. It was a very large increase, and we're not just talking about locally, we're talking about throughout New Zealand in this particular industry, and that has contributed a large component of the increased costs that we are suffering. That rate of increase has slowed quite considerably in the last year or so, but there has been a large jump, which was a large part of the increased costs that we requested to NZTA. So any increase in the amount of money that we have received has been taken up to a large extent by that factor that's already occurred.
Just obviously we've discussed this around some of the workshops and assets and infrastructure, but you're still looking at the 30% increase still exists. It hasn't gone backwards, has it? So we're still sitting there with the increase sitting on the box, and we've got 116% increase in funding from 21. So we're always going to be on the back foot prior to even starting into our negotiations or trying to get the funding that we require for our area. So technically the central government always has us on the back foot from the start when we go into our negotiations. So when we get hit again, it's almost like two cuts of the cloth. Would that be correct?
Yes, you're correct in that assumption. I think from memory, our overall increase was about 16% on what we'd received in the previous, or what we'd had allocated in the previous 3-year cycle. But if we've had a 20 or 30% increase over that period, then, as I said earlier, most of that has been taken up by that increase.
It's probably not a question, but more of a statement. But basically, I think that's important that people, particularly in the public, understand the situation we end up with our roading budget, that there isn't a lot of leeway there. And as you say in the report, the inflexibility doesn't exist. If you use the analogy of a car going forward, we're actually filling the potholes from behind it, it drives over, and then we take the gravel and put it in front. So you're sort of taking it from one side and putting it, and we keep recycling. So we look at what we've got here today. There's some facts and figures that we just can't beat. We can't beat the cost increases and cost price increases.
Thank you, Councillor. We're starting into comments. So do we have any more questions for Murray? Otherwise we can look for a mover. No more questions. Thank you, Murray. I'll now look for a mover for the recommendations in the report, which is to receive and note the report and to note the further impacts of levels of service that may need to be considered as part of the long-term plan. Councillor Hovell to move, and seconded by Councillor Paul McPhail. Now I'll open the floor to comments, and I will kick off just following on from Councillor McPhail's comment there. It was raised in a meeting today, actually, that I had with Mayor Scott. It's quite a convoluted process, which I think needs to be apparent to the public. If we go through our processes and figure out how much we need, we then go to government, and then they tell us that we can't have that, and then we have to scramble and try and figure out how we're going to fill that gap. And I think that's largely what we're in today, to really dumb it down quite significantly. Either we have to fill the shortcomings, or we have to watch the levels of surface slip. So it's definitely a rock and a hard place. And as Councillor McPhail pointed out, it's two cuts of the cloth. One to try and recover the inflation, and then another to accept the cuts that have come across the board as well. So that's something that we intend on taking to the Minister in 2 weeks' time when he is down, and explaining that this process is really, really difficult. When we go through these LTP processes and they go through theirs, and there's a mismatch here. Even in Murray's report, at stating that they had asked us to include something and then we didn't even get funding for that. It just shows how ridiculous the process is at the moment. That's my 2 cents. Is there any other comments from around the table? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. One of the other things that really concerns me, and it's not potholes at the moment, I think that's been well covered, is actually about the fact that our footpaths may take a hit in all of the urban areas, and given, as we just heard before, the ageing population, we've got increased use with mobility scooters. We actually have people with vision impairments. We have young people using it, adults out walking all the time. And, you know, little things like just that different level in the footpath sometimes can cause accidents. So I do have some concerns about where we're going to be going with that. And I think for our ratepayers in the urban areas, that's also a concern. So I'm just sort of hoping that that will not be overlooked in the big scheme of things.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's really important to highlight, is that only 36% of that activity class was approved, which is pretty low compared to what we were asking for. Councillor Havel.
I find it extremely disappointing, the position that we find ourselves in, and of no fault of our own, we are going to have a reduction in the quality of service that we're able to provide. Put simply, at a time when the Prime Minister is telling us to look at what is necessary, not what is a luxury, it's important that government does its bit in terms of actually funding what is necessary and keeping in place what has been there for many years. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor. Councillor Stringer and then Councillor Phillips.
Through you, Your Worship. Has the government explained or given any reason why the level of funding has dropped, or are they just out of money in their own coffers?
Not to paraphrase, but I guess from this report it shows that they're focused more on the pothole prevention, those rural roads, the roads of national significance. That's where the funding's looks like it's going, not to those safety, well, quote unquote safety improvements. But for us, that's largely footpaths, signs, vegetation, that sort of thing. So it's a changing of priorities, really. And Hawke's Bay, I'm being told as well. So emergency repairs too. Councillor Phillips and then Councillor Gardine.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Well, first of all, let me just say a big thank you to the council staff on what must be an absolute nightmare. And thanks very much, Murray, for persevering with this. And as Councillor O'Val said, it's not our fault. It's been driven by central government. And then I'd just like to say that probably what we need to do is bring the Prime Minister down perhaps Terrace Road or even Townsy Road and drive along that road and see exactly how he feels about those big potholes that we can't afford to fill anymore. It was a matter of about the transferring of funding to where the priorities were, and now we can't, so it's now a level of service right across our district. And yes, we will not have as many footpaths to be put down and renewed. We'll have to find a cheaper way or a cheaper version of how we do it. And the ratepayer who expects a good level of service in our district and who have been getting a reasonable level of service for us for the money will probably find it harder and harder. And I do apologise, but I can't do anything about it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gardine.
Some of this is probably due to quite a few factors. The cyclone in the North Island, and also during COVID we all had a reduction in our vehicles' petrol tax and our road user tax, and right across the board, and that was cut by a third, and a lot of people bought forward, and so the income to NZTA dropped significantly, quite a lot, because people weren't on the roads as well, and so they built up quite a lot of debt, and that flowed over it now and has wrecked the cash flow in the NZTA to be able to provide subsidies to the councils, which is there's a catch-up period, and basically road users, petrol tax has gone back up and people are back on the roads. So the money will flow, but it's going to take time to catch up on the debt. But it's interesting to see the ring fencing of the gravel and for potholing and for paving, that has been ring fenced, because in the past in our council we've seen up to 20% of that being missed out every year and gone to other areas. And the rural people do look forward to seeing some increase in gravelling, grading and maintenance of drainage on gravel roads, because that's what we've missed out on, and we are paying the price for that right now on our roads. Our vehicles are getting hammered. We would like to think there'll be an improvement, because we've got 100% funded in that area and we won't get any of that missed, so that'll be a good plus. But I mean, the other areas, yes, there is funding gaps, but I think NZCTA should have more funding coming in the next few years, because if you go to buy road users now, you'll see it's significantly higher than it was 2 years ago.
Thank you, Councillor. 2 points there, and good points. One is, I know that Southland's doing a lot of work on those road users charges and making sure that allocation comes back down this way. That's pretty uneven at the moment in terms of that split to the rest of the country. The second thing that you touched on is, yes, it's great to see that pothole prevention has been fully funded, and pretty good for us as a council, considering we increased that drainage budget last annual plan, so it's great to see that fully funded. So to all the people listening, assuming that we do have a sunny summer and we can get both graders out there and working, we should see an improvement on the roads. I know that it's pretty dire out there at the moment. We've had a lot of wet weather. It's been pretty tough to get out there, but hopefully over the summer we should really see some improvements with that. For urban areas, with this budget, we'll likely see a degradation over time, which is a bit of a concern. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, but on that point, during COVID, just to make a point of that, Southland didn't stop. Everybody, every farm, every primary industry worker in this place worked. Milk tankers were on the road. We were working. The tanks were full. Unfortunately, these roads of national significance, all 99% of them in the upper part of the North Island, are more important, because I would suggest that's where the voter base is making the biggest decisions about where the funding is going.
I see, Councillor. Any further comments? I do want to, in some capacity, whether it be a council meeting or a different format, get the presentation that Southland is doing to the Minister. There's some really good facts that I think the public should understand about the situation with the national funding of roading across our region, because it's a bit disproportionate at the moment. And I know that Southland and also ourselves are doing some big advocacy in that area. We have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further comments, I will look to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against, the motion is carried. Thank you for that discussion, councillors. And we will move on to our only report for decision, which is the Culling Terrace walkway. Keith, did you want to talk about this at all? Come on up. Come on up.
Just a bit of the background, really. The Matara community have always, probably last 4 or 5 years anyway, there's been a budget allocation of 20k per year for Culling Terrace walkway. I think the previous Matara Community Board agreed that once the work had finished at Culling Terrace, that walkway allocation would carry on for other Matara walkways, so that I guess it becomes more options for Matara residents going forward with, I guess, walking tracks off the road. Some of this report has come as a result of Murray's area not having funding, so the proposal to use part of the funds for footpath along Doctors Road. Initially we talked with Roading about doing that work, and they no longer have funding, so essentially it's making a linkage between Carna Street and the lower section of the Culling Terrace walkway. So there's an access point on, there was 2 access points on Doctors Road and one on Carna Terrace. So that's where that's come from. So it's a bit unusual, but currently the public are accessing the lower walkway going through the Kahangarayo car park, which is really not a desirable situation, and yeah, I think they get a bit frustrated with that. So that's where part of it is, and then the other part is just around carrying out the remaining tree work, which is quite difficult on a. It's quite a steep site, and some of the trees are quite large, really. So there's some acacias and some sycamores, which are casting, I guess, shadow on the properties below, and they're really quite. They're probably in the dangerous category, so they should come down. So.
Thank you, Keith. There's money there. It is budgeted, so there is money there if we approve it today. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I understand that it's definitely well budgeted for, and so there's probably no arguments or concerns there at all. It'll be great to see that area finished. I do have 2 questions regarding the trees, and as you've mentioned, I do realise it's a difficult site. But when they are dropped, is there any opportunity for any community groups to either use it for firewood or for wood turning or things like that? It just seems a shame not to see that timber used for some use.
Yeah, just an answer to your question. We haven't explored that option, but yeah, there definitely will be firewood. Like there's not too much brushwood on any of the logs there. You know, they are quite large. Yeah.
Really good to hear. So further to that, when that area needs revegetated and new plants and things put in, and I know that you've said Mataura community groups, but is there an opportunity to extend that invitation to other community groups within the district? Because I know, as you know, some of the Gore clubs actually have done a lot of planting over on Hamilton Park, and I'm sure they'd be quite keen to go down and help.
Yeah, it's certainly keen to open it. Yeah, I think we've worked with Mataura Primary School and also the Lions Club and Mataura Community Board. So, yeah, I guess they need to have a project themselves. You know, like we hope to continue the work at Hamilton Park as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. Just you are cutting down the trees, so they are being replaced by natives trees?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? I'll let Keith go. Thank you, Keith. Could I please have a mover for those recommendations, which is to receive and note the reports and approve the funding of the Lower Culling Terrace footpath estimated to cost $8,729 from the Matoda Walkway budget allocation, moved by Councillor Fraser, seconded by Councillor Reid. Any further discussions? All good? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against, the motion is carried. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you all for coming along. Nice and quick this month. Cheers.